What if your memories are not yours? Imagine waking up tomorrow with every memory you have today. You remember your childhood bedroom. You remember the smell of a particular house. You remember your first real friendship, your worst embarrassment, the sound of someone's voice you have not heard in years. You remember things nobody else could possibly know. You look in the mirror. You are still you. Or at least, you are almost certain you are. Now imagine something slightly stranger. Suppose that sometime during the night, every one of those memories was copied from your brain into another person's brain. That person wakes up somewhere else. They remember your childhood, they remember your family, they remember your private thoughts, they remember being you. And here is the uncomfortable question. Which one of you is actually you? You might immediately point to yourself. After all, you are standing in your own bedroom. Your body is yours. Your name is yours. Your life is continuing normally. But the other person has something you cannot easily dismiss. They have your entire story. They remember the same birthday parties, the same arguments, the same jokes, the same moments of fear. They remember falling in love. They remember losing people. They remember sitting alone at night and wondering what their life was supposed to become. If memory is what connects your present self to your past self, then the other person appears to possess that connection too. And suddenly, something that seemed obvious becomes difficult. What exactly makes you you? Your body, your memories, your personality, your brain, your consciousness? Or is there something deeper that exists underneath all of those things? This question sounds like science fiction, but it leads into one of the oldest and strangest problems in philosophy and neuroscience. We normally assume that personal identity is simple. You were a child, you became a teenager, then an adult, your body changed, your beliefs changed, your personality changed, your memories changed, yet somehow you remained the same person. We rarely stop to ask why. Perhaps that is because the feeling of being the same person is so powerful that we mistake the feeling for an explanation. But the deeper we look, the stranger it becomes. Shire, the person you were has already disappeared. Think about yourself at age 5. That child probably had a different voice, different fears, different interests, different knowledge, and completely different ideas about the future. You may not even remember many of the things that happened. Your body has changed enormously since then. Your beliefs have changed. Your relationships have changed. Your priorities have changed. Even your brain has developed dramatically. Yet when you look at an old photograph, you do not normally say, "That is a completely different human being." You say, "That's me." Why? There is no single answer accepted by everyone. One possibility is that your identity is primarily biological. You are the same organism that existed years ago. The body has continuously changed, but it has remained part of one uninterrupted biological process. That explanation has something going for it. You do not need to remember your childhood to have been the child you once were. A person with severe memory loss does not suddenly become a different human being. But biology creates another strange problem. Your body is constantly replacing material. Cells die, new cells appear. Your body changes throughout your life. So perhaps you are not defined by the exact physical material making you up. Maybe you are defined by the pattern. Imagine a wave traveling across the ocean. The water in the wave is constantly moving. The individual molecules do not remain in one place. Yet we still talk about the wave as if it were a thing. The wave has a recognizable structure that continues even though its material is changing. Perhaps a person is something like that. Not a permanent object, but an ongoing pattern. Your body changes, but the organization continues. Your brain changes, but certain patterns of activity and connection remain. Your personality changes, but some traits persist. Your memories change, but enough of the story remains for you to experience continuity. Maybe the self is not a thing hidden inside you. Maybe it is a process. And if that is true, we have just stepped into much stranger territory. The self may be more like a story than an object. Consider a novel. The novel has thousands of words. If you remove one word, it remains the same novel. Remove another, still the same. Change a paragraph, still recognizable. Translate it into another language. It is different, but in some sense still the same story. The identity of the novel does not belong to any individual word. It belongs to the relationships between the words. Human beings may work in a similar way. There is no single neuron that contains you. There is no tiny control room inside the brain where a little observer sits and watches the world. Instead, there is an enormous network of activity. Signals move, memories are reconstructed, emotions influence decisions, sensations enter, predictions are generated, actions occur. And somehow, out of all of this, there appears to be a continuous experience of being someone. You. This is one of the deepest mysteries surrounding consciousness. We can study individual brain processes. We can observe electrical activity. We can damage particular brain regions and watch abilities disappear. We can measure how people respond to images, sounds, pain, language, and memories. But none of this completely explains why any of it is accompanied by subjective experience. Why does seeing red feel like something? Why does sadness feel different from fear? Why does remembering your grandmother produce not just information, but a particular emotional atmosphere? Why is there a point of view at all? Science has made enormous progress in understanding the brain, but the basic question of why conscious experience exists remains open. And this matters for personal identity because consciousness may be the thing we are ultimately trying to preserve when we say, "I want to remain me." The strange case of the brain that changes without you noticing. There is another problem. Your brain is not a static machine. It is constantly changing. Learning changes connections between neurons. Experiences alter how the brain responds to future events. Repeated behavior can make certain patterns easier to activate. Sleep changes brain activity. Stress changes it. A conversation can change it. A book can change it. A traumatic experience can change it. So, the person who finishes reading this article may not be exactly the same person who started it. That sounds dramatic, but it is ordinary. Information changes us. Even tiny pieces of information can become part of the machinery that generates future thoughts. You learn someone's name. You discover a new idea. You hear an argument that bothers you. Later, while making coffee, you suddenly think about it again. The thought has entered the system. You cannot simply return to the exact mental state you had before encountering it. In this sense, every experience leaves some kind of trace. Your identity is therefore not just something you carry through time. It is something that time continually modifies. And that leads to an unsettling possibility. Maybe there is no permanent you traveling through life. Maybe there is only a sequence of slightly different versions of you, each inheriting something from the previous one. The 5-year-old gives something to the 10-year-old. The 10-year-old gives something to the 20-year-old. The 20-year-old gives something to the person you are now. But each version eventually disappears, not physically, psychologically. The person you were yesterday is gone. The person who will exist tomorrow has not arrived yet, and yet you experience all of them as belonging to one continuous life. Why? A thought experiment that breaks the idea of identity-machine. You step inside. The machine scans your brain in extraordinary detail and creates an exact physical copy of your brain somewhere else. The copy wakes up. It remembers your childhood. It recognizes your family. It knows your favorite song. It remembers walking into the machine. From the copy's perspective, there is no gap. It believes it is you, but you are still standing inside the machine. There are now 2 people who claim to be you. Which one is correct? At first, you might say the original. Fine. But now imagine that the machine destroys your original body after creating the copy. The copy wakes up. Everyone around it says, "You're alive." It remembers stepping into the machine. It remembers expecting to wake up somewhere else. It looks around. It sees a new body. But it feels completely continuous with the person who entered the machine. Would you consider that person to be you? Some people would say yes, others would say no. And the disagreement reveals something important. We use the word identity as if it refers to one simple property, but perhaps several different ideas are being mixed together. There is biological continuity, there is psychological continuity, there is memory, there is physical structure, there is subjective experience, there is social identity, and there is the mysterious feeling of being the same observer from one moment to the next. These things usually travel together. That is why we never notice the problem. Your memories belong to your brain belongs to your body has one continuous history, and your consciousness seems to follow along. Everything points in the same direction, but thought experiments separate these things. And when they are separated, the concept of me becomes surprisingly difficult to define. What if you could split into two people? Here's where the problem becomes even stranger. Suppose the machine does not create one copy, it creates two. Both copies wake up, both remember your entire life, both sincerely believe they are you. For the first few seconds, they are psychologically identical. Then their lives begin to diverge. One goes left, the other goes right. One falls in love, the other does not. One becomes generous, the other becomes bitter. One lives another 50 years, the other dies young. Which one was the real you? There is no obvious answer. If identity depends entirely on memory, both qualify. If it depends on physical continuity, perhaps neither does. If it depends on consciousness, both claim to possess the continuation of your consciousness. But one person cannot literally become two separate people if identity means numerical sameness. You can have two descendants. You can have two copies, but you cannot have two people who are literally the same individual. This creates a fascinating possibility. Perhaps psychological continuity is not the same thing as identity. Maybe what matters is not being exactly the same person, but having enough continuity with the person who came before. Think about childhood. You do not need to remain psychologically identical to your younger self. You only need enough connection for the later person to be considered the continuation of the earlier one. This may sound like a small distinction. It is not. It changes the question from, am I literally the same person, to how much continuity is enough? And that question appears everywhere in human life. You change your mind all the time. Suppose you once believed something strongly. Years later, you completely reject it. Was your earlier self wrong? Probably. But does that mean the person who held the belief was someone else? No. We instinctively allow identity to survive enormous psychological change. A person can become kinder, more cynical, more confident, more frightened, more religious, more ambitious, less ambitious. They can change careers, friendships, political beliefs, values, and goals. Yet we still say, they changed. We do not normally say, the original person died and a replacement appeared. This tells us something. Personal identity may not require sameness. It may require continuity through change. A river is still called the same river even though the water flowing through it is different. A city can survive for centuries while almost none of its original inhabitants remain. A song remains recognizable even when performed by different musicians. Perhaps a person is similar. The self may be a continuity pattern that survives constant transformation. But there is a catch. Patterns can be copied. If a copy has your memories, does it have your life? Imagine creating a perfect digital copy of your mind. It remembers your entire life. It has your humor, your fears, your habits, your knowledge, your private jokes. It even remembers reading this article. Would that digital person love the people you love? Probably, if the copy were psychologically identical. Would it be afraid of the things you fear? Probably. Would it insist that it is you? Almost certainly, but from your perspective, something strange has happened. You are still here. You did not suddenly experience being inside the copy. The copy has its own point of view. This suggests that copying information may not be the same thing as transferring consciousness, and that distinction is crucial. Imagine copying a photograph. The copy contains the same information, but it is not numerically the same physical photograph. You can have two identical photographs. You cannot say they are literally one photograph occupying two places. Maybe consciousness works similarly. A perfect copy might preserve your memories and personality without transferring your subjective experience. If so, mind uploading would not necessarily mean immortality. It might mean creating someone who remembers being you. That sounds very different. The immortality problem. Nobody talks about. People often imagine immortality as continuing forever. But what exactly would have to continue? Your memories, your personality, your body, your brain, your consciousness? Suppose scientists eventually develop a technology that can create a perfect digital model of your brain. They make the copy. You sit beside it. It looks at you and says, I remember everything. You ask, are you me? It answers, of course. Then you ask, where am I? It points at itself. But you are standing beside it. This is the central problem. From the copy's perspective, continuity seems perfect. From your perspective, nothing has transferred. You remain in your original body. So perhaps immortality cannot be achieved merely by preserving information. Maybe the thing we care about is not information. Maybe it is the uninterrupted continuation of subjective experience. But then another question appears. What counts as uninterrupted? Every night you lose ordinary waking consciousness. During deep sleep, you are not experiencing the world in the normal way. Yet you wake up and say, I slept. You do not usually say the person who went to bed died and someone else woke up. So perhaps a temporary break in consciousness does not matter. What if the break lasted a minute, an hour, a year, 100 years? At what point does waking become resurrection rather than continuation? There is no universally accepted answer, and that may be because the concept itself has no clear boundary. The self as a useful illusion. Some philosophers have argued that the self, at least as we normally imagine it, may not exist as a permanent inner object. That does not mean you are imaginary. It means that the feeling of being one permanent, unified I may be something the brain constructs. Think about a corporation. A company can exist for 200 years. Its employees change, its buildings change, its products change, its leaders change, its customers change. Yet we still talk about the company as one entity. Why? Because the organization has continuity. The same can be true of a nation. A country can change its borders, government, population, language, and culture. Still, people say it survived. Perhaps the human self works in a similar way. You are not a permanent object. You are a continuously changing organization. Your memories connect different stages. Your habits connect them. Your body connects them. Your relationships connect them. Your plans connect them. And your brain constantly creates the feeling that all of this belongs to one person. That feeling is incredibly useful. Without some sense of continuity, planning would become almost impossible. Why save money for tomorrow if tomorrow's person feels completely unrelated to you? Why exercise? Why learn? Why apologize for something you did years ago? Why care about what happens to you in 20 years? The concept of a continuing self allows you to treat your future self as someone whose well-being matters. In a strange sense, you are constantly making decisions for a person who does not yet exist, and you trust that person will be you. Your future self is almost a stranger. Consider the person you will be 20 years from now. You cannot know exactly who they will become. They may have different interests, different friends, different fears, different values, different memories. They may live somewhere you cannot imagine. They may look completely different, and yet you care about them. You save money for them. You avoid certain risks for them. You study for them. You make sacrifices for them. Why? Because you assume there is a connection between you and that future person. But psychologically, the connection may weaken as the time gap grows. This is one reason people sometimes choose immediate rewards over long-term benefits. The future self can feel abstract. It is almost like helping a stranger. The strange part is that the stranger will eventually become you, or rather, you will eventually become them. This creates a beautiful paradox. Your future self is someone you have never met, but you are already responsible for their life. And your past self was once someone who had never met you either. The child you were made decisions without knowing the adult who would inherit the consequences. You are now living inside choices made by someone who no longer exists in quite the same form. Every life is therefore a chain of temporary selves handing the consequences of their actions to the next one. Memory is not a video recording. There is another reason the mystery becomes more complicated. We tend to imagine memories as recordings. Something happened, your brain stored it. Later, you replay it. But human memory does not appear to work that way. Remembering is more like reconstruction. You retrieve pieces. Your current knowledge influences interpretation. Emotion can change what becomes important. Time can blur details. Later experiences can affect how an earlier event is understood. This does not mean memories are useless or always false. It means they are not perfect recordings of the past. And that creates a strange implication. One of the things you use to prove that you are the same person over time is itself changing. Your memories are part of the mechanism that tells you who you are. But those memories are not frozen. They are continually reconstructed. You are, in a sense, telling yourself the story of your own life again and again, and every retelling can slightly reshape the story. This does not make your identity fake. Stories can be real in their consequences, but it suggests that identity may be partly narrative. You are not simply carrying your past around, you are interpreting it. You decide which moments matter. You connect events. You explain why you became the person you are. You turn thousands of disconnected experiences into one story, my life. And stories can change. Think about something embarrassing that happened years ago. At the time, it may have felt enormous. You could barely sleep. You replayed it repeatedly. You imagined everyone judging you. Years later, you might laugh. The event itself did not change. Your interpretation changed. This happens constantly. A failure becomes a lesson. A breakup becomes the beginning of a new life. A painful decision becomes something you are grateful for. A random encounter becomes a turning point. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. We do not simply remember what happened, we ask what it meant, and that meaning becomes part of who we are. This is one reason two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different identities. One sees disaster, another sees opportunity. One sees rejection, another sees freedom. One remembers humiliation, another remembers the moment they finally learned to stop caring what people thought. The event is shared. The stories are different. So perhaps your identity is partly the story your brain tells about the relationship between your past and your present. But if that is true, then there is another unsettling question. What happens when the story is wrong? The person you think you are may be based on a mistake. Imagine someone who has always believed, I'm not brave. Maybe they remember childhood moments when they were afraid. They remember failing at something. They remember being laughed at. Over time, these memories become evidence. The person builds an identity around them. I'm the kind of person who avoids risk. Then one day, circumstances force them to act. They do something courageous. Perhaps they discover that their old identity was never a fact, it was a conclusion. This happens in less dramatic ways every day. People say, I'm bad at math, I'm not creative, I'm not a social person, I'm just lazy. I've always been this way. But these statements can become some self-reinforcing stories. The more a person believes a particular identity, the more likely they may be to notice evidence supporting it and ignore evidence that contradicts it. The result is strange. The self can become partly a prediction. You expect yourself to behave in a certain way. That expectation influences behavior. The behavior reinforces the expectation. The identity becomes stronger. I am this kind of person. But perhaps identity is less like a prison and more like a habit. Habits can be powerful. They are not necessarily permanent. If there is no permanent self, does anything matter? At this point, the idea can become uncomfortable. If the self is constantly changing, what does it mean to say that your life matters? If there is no permanent inner object, why care about anything? The answer may be that permanence was never required for meaning. A song does not need to last forever to be beautiful. A conversation does not need to continue forever to matter. A childhood ends. A friendship can end. A sunset lasts minutes. Their temporary nature does not make them meaningless. In fact, impermanence may be part of why they matter. You do not need an eternal self for pain to hurt. You do not need an immortal identity for love to matter. You do not need to exist forever for a decision made today to affect another human being tomorrow. Meaning may exist in relationships between moments, not in permanent objects. A smile matters because someone experienced it. A kindness matters because it changed another person's experience. A mistake matters because it affects what happens next. The self may be temporary. The consequences of what we do can extend far beyond us. The most disturbing possibility, maybe there is no one driving there, is an even deeper question hiding beneath all of this. If the brain generates thoughts, emotions, decisions, memories, and perceptions, who is actually in control? We often imagine the mind like a driver sitting inside a vehicle. The brain is the machine. The self is the driver. The brain receives information. The self decides what to do. But neuroscience complicates this picture. Much of what happens in the brain occurs before we become consciously aware of it. Your brain is constantly processing information outside conscious attention. You do not consciously decide to understand every word you read. You do not manually control every muscle involved in walking. You do not consciously calculate every detail required to recognize a familiar face. Your brain handles enormous amounts of work automatically. This has led to serious debates about free will. Some researchers and philosophers argue that conscious choice may not work the way ordinary intuition suggests. Others argue that experiments showing unconscious brain activity do not prove that free will is an illusion. The evidence is more complicated than the popular version of the story. What is clear is that conscious awareness is not the only thing happening inside your mind. You are not fully aware of the machinery producing your thoughts, and yet you experience yourself as the author of them. That is another mystery. Perhaps the self is not the driver. Imagine a massive orchestra. Hundreds of musicians are playing. No single musician creates the entire symphony. The sound emerges from the interaction of all of them. Now imagine that the symphony somehow becomes aware of itself. It might say, "I am the music." That statement would be true, but there would not be a tiny musician inside the orchestra creating the music. The music would emerge from the entire system. Perhaps consciousness is somewhat like this. There may not be a separate inner observer controlling the brain. Instead, the feeling of being an observer may emerge from the brain's activity. This is still an area of deep scientific and philosophical debate. It is not established that consciousness is simply an emergent property in the straightforward sense. We do not yet have a complete theory explaining subjective experience, but the possibility is worth considering. If the self emerges from the brain rather than sitting inside it, then asking where the self physically exists may be like asking where exactly a melody is located inside a piano. The melody is real, but it is not a separate object hidden among the strings. It is a pattern produced by the whole system. Perhaps you are something like that. Then what are you? Maybe you are your body. That is a reasonable answer. Without your particular biological organism, the person called you would not exist in the ordinary sense. Maybe you are your brain. That answer explains much about personality, memory, emotion, and consciousness. Maybe you are your memories, but memory can disappear while the person remains. Maybe you are your personality, but personality changes. Maybe you are your consciousness, but consciousness itself can change, disappear during sleep, and become altered by injury, drugs, illness, or other conditions. Maybe you are the continuity connecting all of these things. That answer is attractive, but continuity is not a physical object. It is a relationship, and perhaps that is the key. Maybe we have been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, "What is the self?" we might ask, what connects one moment of a human life to another? The answer may involve biology, memory, brain structure, personality, relationships, and narrative. No single ingredient may be enough. Together, they create something that feels remarkably stable. Stable enough that you wake up every morning without questioning whether the person who went to sleep was really you. The ship of Theseus inside your head. There is an ancient philosophical puzzle known as the ship of Theseus. Imagine a wooden ship. Over many years, every part is replaced. One plank is replaced, then another, then another. Eventually, none of the original material remains. Is it still the same ship? Now imagine someone collects all the original parts and rebuilds another ship somewhere else. Which ship is the original? The puzzle has no universally accepted solution. But your life is strangely similar. Your body changes, your brain changes, your beliefs change, your memories change, your relationships change, your goals change. Yet you continue to call the changing structure by the same name, you. Perhaps the puzzle does not have to be solved. Perhaps human identity is one of those concepts that works perfectly in ordinary life but becomes unstable at the edges. It is useful to say that you are the same person you were 10 years ago. It is also useful to recognize that you are not psychologically identical to that person. Both statements can be true because same person is doing more than one job. It refers to continuity. It refers to responsibility. It refers to memory. It refers to social relationships. It refers to biology. It refers to the story connecting your life. There may be no single invisible ingredient called selfhood. There may simply be a remarkably persistent pattern. What happens if we accept that? If this view is even partly correct, it changes how we think about ourselves. First, it becomes harder to say, "That's just who I am." Maybe who you are is not a fixed object. Maybe you are an ongoing process. Second, it becomes easier to understand personal change. You do not need to become a completely different person to change your life. You can think of change as modifying the pattern rather than replacing the person. Third, it changes how we think about other people. Someone who behaves badly is not necessarily a permanently bad person. That does not erase responsibility. Actions still have consequences. But if people are processes rather than fixed objects, then the possibility of change becomes more realistic. A cruel person can become kinder. A fearful person can become brave. A selfish person can learn generosity. A confused person can become wiser. The future person does not have to be trapped by the identity constructed by the past. And perhaps most importantly, it changes how we think about our future selves. The person you become is being shaped right now. Every habit is a message sent forward through time. Every decision says something like, "This is the person I am helping to create." The stranger who will inherit your life. Imagine meeting yourself 20 years from now. You sit across from that person in a quiet room. They know everything you have experienced since today. They remember things you have not experienced yet. They know which decisions worked. They know which ones failed. They know who stayed. They know who left. They know which worries were pointless. They know which small moments became important. You would probably recognize them, but you might also be surprised by how different they are. And that person would look at you with an equally strange feeling. Because to them, you are the beginning of their story. You are the person who made the decisions they now live with. You are their past. They are your future. Neither of you is completely identical to the other, yet neither can exist without the other. That may be what personal identity really is. Not sameness, continuity, not a permanent object, a relationship across time. And then there is the final mystery. Return to the original thought experiment. A perfect copy of you wakes up somewhere else. It has your memories, your personality, your fears, your dreams. It remembers your entire life. It says, "I am you." You say, "No, I am me." Both statements feel completely convincing, and perhaps that is the point. The mystery is not simply that we do not know which person is really you. The mystery is that the question may assume something that reality does not provide. We want there to be one permanent essence, one unmistakable answer, one little flame that can be tracked from childhood to old age, but perhaps there is no such thing. Perhaps a human life is more like a fire. A fire remains recognizable while constantly changing. The material feeding it changes, the shape changes, the flames move. No individual flame lasts. And yet we can still say that the fire continues. You may be like that. The person you were is gone. The person you will become does not exist yet. The body is changing, the brain is changing, the memories are changing, the story is changing, and somehow through all of this, there is a continuing experience that says, "I am here." Maybe that feeling is the deepest mystery of all. Not that the self changes, but that a changing system can experience itself as one continuous person. You wake up every morning and inherit a life from someone who existed yesterday. You accept their memories, their unfinished plans, their mistakes, their promises, their relationships, their consequences. And then throughout the day, you quietly change the person who will wake up tomorrow. You are both the heir and the ancestor of yourself. The child you once were handed you a life. The person you are today is holding it for a little while. And the person you become tomorrow will inherit whatever you decide to leave behind. So perhaps the question is not, how can I remain the same person forever? Perhaps the more interesting question is, what kind of person am I creating through all this change? Because if there is no permanent self hiding underneath your life, then identity is not something you simply discover. It is something you participate in creating, moment by moment, memory by memory, choice by choice. And maybe that is not a frightening answer. Maybe it is the strangest kind of freedom. You are not a finished object moving through time. You are a story that is still being written, and unlike a book sitting on a shelf, you do not get to read the ending before you reach it.